"You're going to give us sons," said the 3 black virgins to the Mafia boss. 3 fearless women walk into his rooftop office at midnight and make a deal that could end a secret pipeline of pain. He locks the city out and locks them in. A red sniper dot hits the glass. Someone wants them dead, and the shot came from inside his house. Now forced to live under his protection, the healer sets rules. The fighter trains with his crew. The strategist finds a brutal truth in an old truce. If heirs are recognized, the enemy loses everything. But a smiling father in the shadows wants those heirs for himself, and he's turning their demand into a trap. A fake wedding. A real war. A choice that could free thousands or chain them forever. Will these 3 vows make a family or crown a monster? Through the pitch darkness, Renzo's tactical instincts took over. He moved with lethal precision, keeping his body between Naomi and the compromised window. The thick ballistic glass had caught the round, but spiderweb cracks spread ominously across its surface. "Stay down, Akka Sunbound," he ordered, his voice carrying the kind of authority that brooked no argument. His hand found Naomi's shoulder in the dark, steadying her. Her pulse raced beneath his fingers, but her breathing remained controlled, a doctor's discipline even under fire. Brielle had already dropped into a crouch behind his heavy mahogany desk, her analytical mind clearly racing through scenarios. "Second building west, approximately 35 degrees elevation," she assessed calmly, though her knuckles were white where they gripped the desk's edge. Zoe moved like a shadow, pressing herself against the wall beside the window. Her eyes had adjusted quickly to the darkness, scanning for additional threats. "Single shooter, professional setup. They knew exactly where to find us." The emergency lighting kicked in with a low red glow, casting eerie shadows across the office. Renzo's security system hummed to life, metal shutters beginning their descent over the windows with a mechanical whir. "Your security's compromised," Brielle stated, her tone matter-of-fact, despite the situation. "That keycard shouldn't have worked if your systems were intact." Agreed. Renzo's jaw clenched as he helped Naomi to a safer position. His touch remained carefully respectful even in crisis. "Which means we have limited time before they breach the lower levels." Naomi's medical training surfaced through her fear. "We need to check the other guests. If they're targeting us, civilians could be caught in the crossfire." "My men will handle evacuation protocols," Renzo assured her, but his expression softened slightly at her concern for others. "Right now, we need to move. There's a secure route through the service corridor." Zoe's hand had found her concealed blade, small enough to have made it through the gala's security. "They'll be expecting that. Standard procedure would funnel us toward predetermined choke points." "Good thing we don't do standard," Brielle interjected, pulling a small tablet from her clutch. Her fingers flew across the screen. "The building plans show maintenance access through the north wall. Harder to monitor, harder to trap." Renzo's dark eyes assessed each woman in turn, the strategist already analyzing angles, the healer thinking of others even under threat, the fighter ready to meet violence with violence. They'd come demanding an alliance on their terms. Now survival would forge something deeper than paper agreements. "Your choice," he said, his voice grave. "You can leave now, try to disappear before they close the net, or you stay, and we handle this together. But if you stay, we do this my way." The sisters exchanged loaded glances in the crimson emergency lighting. Years of watching each other's backs had taught them to communicate volumes in silence. "We stay," Brielle answered for all of them. "But we're not hiding in your compound while you handle everything. We fight our own battles." "Agreed," Renzo said, surprising them with his quick acceptance. "But first we need to identify the leak in my organization. Someone gave up my schedule, the office layout, security codes." The floor-to-ceiling windows finally sealed completely behind their metal shields, but the tension in the room remained razor-sharp. Somewhere in the building, boots would be moving up stairwells, weapons at ready. Zoe shifted her grip on her blade. "How many of your own men do you trust right now?" 5, Renzo answered without hesitation. "They're already moving to secure our exit route." Naomi had gathered herself, professional calm replacing initial shock. "We need to assume they've compromised the building's medical resources. I have supplies in my car if we can reach the garage." "Too exposed," Brielle countered, still working on her tablet. "But the surgical suite on the 40th floor would have what you need. We should—" A muffled explosion from several floors below cut her off, the floor trembling beneath their feet. Distant alarms began to wail. "They're pushing us up," Zoe said grimly. "Classic vertical containment. They'll try to trap us on the roof." Renzo was already moving to a painting on the wall, swinging it aside to reveal a biometric safe. The safe door opened at his palm print, revealing an array of matte black weapons. "Take what you can use," he ordered, his tone making it clear this wasn't the time for pride or hesitation. "But understand, from this point forward we operate as a unit. No lone wolf heroics, no splitting up, no individual agendas." As the women armed themselves with efficient practiced movements, the building shook with another explosion. Closer this time. Renzo noted how they each checked their chosen weapon with competent familiarity, another piece clicking into place about who these sisters really were. "Time to move," he said, securing his own sidearm. "Stay tight, watch. Corners, and remember, they want us alive, or they would have used larger caliber rounds through the window. That gives us an advantage." "They'll regret that choice," Zoe promised darkly, checking her sightlines toward the door. The office's reinforced door suddenly chirped, the electronic lock disengaging. Someone was overriding the security protocols. Renzo and the sisters moved as one into defensive positions, weapons trained on the entrance. Steel scraped against steel as the door began to open. The door burst open to reveal Marco, Renzo's most trusted lieutenant, his weapon already sweeping the room for threats. "Clear path to the north stairwell, boss. 2 minutes until we lose that window." Renzo guided them toward a wood-paneled section of wall that slid away at his touch, revealing a narrow emergency stairwell bathed in strips of red lighting. The sisters moved with practiced coordination, no wasted motion, no hesitation. "Brielle, navigation," Renzo ordered, taking point as they descended. "Zoe, rear guard. Naomi, stay centered." Brielle pulled up building schematics on her phone, the blue glow casting shadows as they moved. "2 flights down, West Corridor Junction. Security feeds show hostiles concentrated on the main stairs." The metallic ping of spent shell casings caught Zoe's attention. She pulled latex gloves from her clutch, gathering the brass without breaking stride. 7.62 mm, professional grade. Their practiced movements spoke of years spent watching each other's backs. Renzo filed away each detail, building a clearer picture of the women who'd upended his night with their bold demands. They encountered one of Renzo's men at the next landing, clutching his bicep, where blood seeped between his fingers. Naomi immediately broke formation, medical instincts taking over. "Keep pressure here," she instructed, using strips torn from her evening gown to craft a quick pressure dressing. "The bullet's still inside, but missed the artery. You'll need surgery once we're clear." Renzo spoke rapidly into his comm unit. "Convoy status?" 3 vehicles staged at the loading dock, Marco reported. Air transport standing by at the private strip. "Good. We move in 5. Renzo turned to the sisters. "Before we go further, Naomi, you have my word I won't touch you without explicit consent. Your body remains your own." Naomi's hands stilled briefly on the bandage before she nodded, accepting his promise. "Zoe," he continued, "you'll get range time, proper training, earn the right to carry your own weapon, but you follow protocol." "Fair," Zoe agreed, though her grip tightened on her borrowed gun. Brielle stepped forward, ever the negotiator. "And if you can't keep us safe, we need guaranteed escape options, resources to disappear if this goes wrong." "Agreed. We'll draft terms once we're secure. For now, trust that I want you alive as much as you do." Renzo checked his watch. Time to move. They descended through the building like a well-oiled machine, Brielle calling out turns and blind spots, Zoe collecting ballistic evidence, Naomi stabilizing injured security personnel they encountered. Renzo's remaining loyal men fell into formation around them, a choreographed dance of covering fire and defensive positions. The loading dock was a maze of shipping containers and delivery vehicles. Marco's team had positioned 3 armored SUVs, engines running. They were halfway to the vehicles when the night lit up with an orange flash from the direction of downtown. Naomi gasped. "That's our safe house." The explosion bloomed against the sky, confirmation that someone had found their backup location. Renzo caught the flash of fear in their eyes, the realization that all their careful planning, all their escape routes, had been compromised. "Into the cars now," he ordered, brooking no argument. "First vehicle, you 3 with me. Marco, take your team and the others, standard convoy protocol." They peeled out of the loading dock as more explosions rocked the upper floors of the tower behind them. Renzo's driver took evasive routes through the city while Brielle monitored police bands on her phone and Zoe kept watch through the bulletproof glass. The private airstrip sat on the outskirts of the city, a discreet facility Renzo maintained for necessity. His Gulfstream was already powered up, stairs deployed, flight crew running pre-flight checks. 30 seconds to transfer, Marco called over the radio. No tails detected. They pulled onto the tarmac in tight formation. Renzo's security team created a protective cordon as they sprinted for the jet. The sisters paused at the stairs, looking back at the orange glow still visible above the city skyline, their old life burning away. There's no going back now, Renzo said quietly. We move forward. My compound, my protection, while we figure out who's hunting you and why they're willing to burn down Chicago to get to you. The jet engines spooled up as they strapped in, the cabin pressurizing as the door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. Through the windows, they could see Marco's team setting up defensive positions around the airstrip. Naomi's hands shook slightly as she buckled her seatbelt. Zoe reached across the aisle to squeeze her sister's fingers, while Brielle was already pulling up satellite maps of their destination on her tablet. The compound has a fully equipped medical wing, Renzo told Naomi. You'll have complete autonomy there. And unrestricted access to your operational data. Brielle pressed, ever focused on leverage. Within reason, we'll establish protocols. He studied their tense faces in the dim cabin lighting. I know this isn't what you planned when you walked into my office tonight, but someone forced our hands, and now we adapt. The jet began to taxi, powerful engines drowning out the distant sirens. In less than an hour, they'd gone from making demands to depending on the very man they'd tried to manipulate, but as Renzo watched them settle into their seats, he saw steel in their spines, calculation in their eyes. These women were survivors, not victims. Whatever came next, they would face it standing, not hiding. The plane lifted off into the night sky, banking away from the burning city below. Behind them, their carefully constructed lives crumbled to ash. Ahead lay Renzo's fortress, and all the complicated promises, power plays, and protection it represented. The Gulf Stream touched down on a private airstrip tucked between dense forest and Lake Michigan's shoreline. Through the windows, floodlights illuminated a perimeter of chain link topped with razor wire, guard towers positioned at strategic intervals. 3 black SUVs idled on the tarmac, their armor plating visible even in the pre-dawn gloom. Welcome to the compound, Renzo said as they descended the jet stairs. You'll have full access within safety protocols. The convoy rolled through massive iron gates that seemed to materialize from the tree line. Cameras tracked their progress while armed figures moved with military precision along the walls. Brielle noted at least 3 checkpoints before they reached the main house, a modernist fortress of stone and bulletproof glass built into the natural slope of the land. Inside, the entrance hall's marble floors and crystal chandeliers created an oddly normal facade, but the reinforced doors and biometric scanners revealed the building's true nature. A team of staff stood waiting, all with the hyper-alert posture of trained operatives. Marco will handle security protocols, Renzo said, nodding to his captain. But first, let's establish your roles here. You're not prisoners. You're under protection with full agency within these walls. He led them to his study, a wood-paneled room with lake views and multiple computer screens. Brielle, you'll have access to all strategy meetings and legal documentation about the truce. That includes historical records and current intelligence. Your analytical skills could help us weaponize the clause effectively. Brielle's fingers twitched, already eager to dig into the data. And operational oversight? Within reason. You'll be briefed on all major moves. Turning to Naomi, his tone softened slightly. The East Wing houses a fully equipped medical facility. It's yours to run as you see fit. Whatever supplies or equipment you need, just make a list. You'll have complete autonomy with your patients. Naomi's eyes widened at the extensive trauma bay visible through the reinforced windows. My own clinic. And Zoe, he continued. You'll train daily with Marco. Range time, tactical driving, guard rotation protocols. Turn that raw talent into precision. Zoe straightened, chin lifting. When do we start? Tomorrow. Tonight you need food and rest. As they toured the compound, details emerged that shifted their perspective of their host. Naomi noticed how Renzo moved, carefully around his left side. Old injuries from the way his muscles compensated. When he reached for a high cabinet, his shirt pulled up to reveal surgical scars tracking across his ribs. In the security office, Brielle discovered a ledger while reviewing protocols. Pages of anonymous wire transfers to women's shelters and witness protection programs, each tied to dates when trafficking operations were disrupted. She said nothing, but filed it away. Zoe picked up on other things during the tactical walkthrough, how the guards relaxed minutely in Renzo's presence, despite his obvious lethality, the way he remembered every staff member's name, his unwavering patience explaining security measures she questioned. The kitchen staff had prepared a late dinner, the formal dining room softened by candlelight. As they ate, Renzo outlined the compound's daily rhythms. The house staff have strict protocols about personal space and privacy. They're well-trained and discreet, but they report to you within their domains. Unless there's an immediate security threat, your wishes are law within these walls. And if there is a threat? Brielle asked. Then we lock down and you follow evacuation procedures without argument. Your safety is paramount. Naomi swayed slightly, exhaustion finally hitting. Renzo noticed immediately. Time to show you to your rooms. The east corridor is yours, completely secured. They followed him through biometric checkpoints to a wing with 3 spacious suites. Each door had a fingerprint scanner programmed to its occupant. The entire corridor locks down at night. No one enters without your explicit permission, including me. He demonstrated the security features, then stepped back. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start making sense of who targeted you and why. And figure out how to use the truce to end this, Brielle added. Renzo nodded. I meant what I said. I'm lethal to my enemies, but my word to you is iron. This compound is your sanctuary for as long as you need it. Looking at their 3 faces, the strategist, the healer, the fighter, he saw not victims, but allies. Women who had walked into his office demanding impossible things, and instead found a partnership none of them had expected. Sleep well, he said simply, then turned and strode away, his footsteps fading as blast doors whispered shut behind him. The sisters stood in their private corridor, processing the surreal turn their lives had taken in mere hours. From planning an audacious gambit, to surviving an attack, to finding themselves in a fortress with a dangerous man who operated by his own complex code of honor. Well, Zoe said finally, this should be interesting. Brielle snorted softly. That's one word for it. We should try to rest, Naomi suggested, ever practical. Tomorrow we start learning to navigate this new reality. They separated to their rooms, each door recognizing their unique prints with soft beeps. The suites were luxurious, but not opulent, clearly designed for comfort and security rather than display. Through their windows, they could see the lake reflecting the first hint of dawn. Inside her room, Naomi ran her fingers over the medic alert button by the bed. Zoe checked the weapon locker built into her closet. Brielle examined the encrypted tablet on her desk. Small signs that Renzo had prepared for their arrival, with careful attention to their individual needs and skills. The compound settled into pre-dawn quiet, cameras scanning, guards patrolling, water lapping at the shore beyond the walls. In 3 separate rooms, 3 women who had gambled everything on a desperate plan lay awake, processing how that plan had twisted into something far more complex and wondering what the coming days would reveal about the man who now held their safety, and perhaps their future, in his scarred hands. Dawn crept over the lake as Brielle's tablet chimed. She'd been awake for hours, reviewing security feeds from the night before. The notification made her sit up straighter, fingers flying across the screen. Well, that's interesting, she murmured, pulling up timestamp data from the rooftop cameras. A clear gap appeared in the footage precisely when the shot was fired. Someone had scrubbed it clean. 20 minutes later, she found Renzo in the war room, a space dominated by monitors and tactical maps. He stood at a gleaming steel table, dark suit impeccable despite the early hour. 2 cups of black coffee sat waiting. You found something, he said, not a question. The footage disappears for exactly 47 seconds. Brielle pulled up the data. Professional job. They knew your systems. His jaw tightened, but he remained still, analyzing. Inside job. Has to be. The timestamp signature matches your security protocols. Across the compound, Naomi moved through the clinic with quiet efficiency, checking inventory against her requirements. The space was state-of-the-art, better equipped than some hospitals. She logged controlled substances, verified crash cart supplies, arranged surgical instruments to her precise specifications. Meanwhile, Zoe had claimed a corner of the security hub, timing guard rotations on a tablet and mapping blind spots. The guards gave her space, responding to her questions with professional courtesy. They'd clearly been briefed on her role. A knock interrupted the focused silence. One of Renzo's lieutenants entered with a sealed evidence bag. Ballistics report, boss. Renzo opened it carefully, reading with growing stillness, the kind of stillness that made everyone in the room hold their breath. The casing bears a Valenti stamp, he said finally, voice dangerously quiet. From our private stores. Brielle moved closer, examining the report. The mark was distinctive, a tiny V with a crown, used only on ammunition stored in Renzo's personal armory. Someone either stole the rounds or the weapon itself, she concluded. Renzo's hands clenched on the table edge. The lieutenant shifted nervously, sensing the gathering storm. Sir, should we begin interrogations? Lock down the— No. Naomi's voice came from the doorway. She'd arrived silently, still wearing her lab coat. Mass interrogations will only create fear and resentment. We need precision, not paranoia. She approached Renzo, unafraid of his barely contained rage. Fear makes people sloppy, both the hunters and the hunted. We need everyone clear-headed. For a long moment, Renzo stared at her. Then his shoulders relaxed fractionally. Order complete inventory of the armory, quiet audits of access logs. No one tips our hand. I'll cross-reference the duty rosters from the past month, Brielle offered. Look for patterns. I want to know everyone who touched those weapons, Renzo agreed. But carefully, if we spook them. They might accelerate their timeline, Brielle finished. The lieutenant nodded and withdrew. Naomi touched Renzo's arm lightly before returning to her clinic. The gesture seemed to steady him further. Hours passed in focused work. Brielle built spreadsheets of access patterns. Naomi finished organizing her medical domain. Renzo made calls, his voice measured, despite the tension evident in his shoulders. Late afternoon found Zoe in the private range, surrounded by the smell of gun oil and powder. Renzo had insisted on personally overseeing her first session. Stance is crucial, he explained, placing a matte black pistol in her hands. Square your shoulders. He moved behind her, adjusting her grip without pressing close. His hands were warm and calloused, touching only where necessary to correct her form. Thumb here. Support hand firm but not locked. Sight picture clean. Zoe focused on the target, aware of his presence but appreciating his respect for boundaries. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive but subtle, like aged wood and winter air. Breathe out and squeeze, he instructed. Don't pull. The shot cracked through the range, dead center. Good. His voice held approval, but no surprise. Again. They worked in silence, broken only by necessary instructions. Each shot found its mark with increasing precision. Zoe felt the weapon becoming an extension of her will, guided by Renzo's quiet expertise. Finally, he called a halt. As she cleared the pistol with practiced movements, their eyes met. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement that this was more than just training. Trust and danger, protection and threat, all wrapped together in this strange new reality they shared. He secured the weapon in a biometric safe, keyed to both their prints. Same time tomorrow. Looking forward to it, Zoe replied, meaning it. Throughout the compound, systems hummed, guards patrolled, cameras watched, and somewhere behind the facade of normal operations, someone who had access to Renzo's innermost sanctum was watching too, waiting for their next opportunity to strike. The four of them had formed an unlikely alliance, the crime lord, the strategist, the healer, and the fighter, each bringing their skills to bear on a puzzle where every piece could mean life or death. Trust was a currency they couldn't afford to spend recklessly, yet somehow they were learning to invest it in each other, one careful moment at a time. As evening approached, they gathered in the war room again, sharing updates and plans. The atmosphere was focused but not frantic. They were playing a long game now, and patience would be as crucial as precision. Naomi had protocols in place for any medical emergency. Brielle had begun mapping suspicious patterns in the data. Zoe had identified 3 potential security gaps, and Renzo, watching them work with quiet intensity, seemed to be reevaluating his own organization through their fresh perspectives. They were no longer just seeking shelter behind his walls. They were building something new together, something that might be strong enough to survive whatever storm was coming. The afternoon sun slanted through bulletproof glass as Renzo spread satellite maps across his war room table. Brielle leaned in, her finger tracing potential entry points to a warehouse complex. The shipping manifests don't match the storage capacity, she noted, tapping a loading dock. False walls. Likely. Renzo's shoulder brushed hers as he overlaid building schematics. We'll start here, work our way through the network systematically. Their heads bent together over documents, a dance of strategy rather than seduction. Yet there was intimacy in this shared purpose, this mutual dismantling of evil's infrastructure. Down in the clinic, Naomi snapped on latex gloves, her manner professional as she faced Renzo's top lieutenant. Remove your shirt. I need to document existing injuries. The man glanced at Renzo, who nodded once before removing his own jacket and shirt. Full assessments for everyone, starting with me. The clinic is her domain. Naomi's fingers were clinical, but gentle as she cataloged old wounds. bullet scars, knife marks, the evidence of a violent life written in scar tissue. Her touch remained steady even when she found the massive blast damage along his ribs. "The bomb that killed your wife?" she asked quietly. "Yes." His voice was granite. She made her notes without comment, but her hands grew slightly softer, acknowledging the pain beneath the wounds without compromising her professional distance. 3 floors below, in the echoing range, Zoe's breath huffed against training mats as she practiced breaks from various holds. The security captain demonstrated proper technique while Renzo observed, offering corrections. "Again," he ordered. "But this time, remember, control matters more than force. You're not trying to kill, just escape." Zoe nodded, sweat darkening her tank top as she repeated the movement. This time, when the captain's arm wrapped around her throat, she used leverage instead of strength, slipping free without causing injury. Better. Renzo's approval was measured but genuine. The goal is to survive, not escalate. Their days fell into rhythm. Morning briefings where they shared intelligence over coffee. Brielle's laptop opened to surveillance feeds, while Naomi reviewed medical reports and Zoe outlined security rotations. Midday found them in their separate domains. Brielle in the war room, plotting tactical approaches. Naomi running her clinic with quiet authority. Zoe drilling with the security team. But they came together for meals, for strategy sessions, for the shared work of building something from the ruins of their old lives. Boundaries were clear. No one entered private rooms uninvited, touch happened only with explicit permission, and every decision was discussed rather than dictated. "The clinic needs a separate generator," Naomi stated during dinner. "Critical equipment can't fail during an attack." "Done," Renzo agreed. "Anything else?" "Trauma kits in every vehicle," she added. "And I want to train your drivers in emergency response." He nodded, respect evident in his expression. Here was a woman who knew her worth and stated her needs without apology. Later that night, Brielle sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by legal documents. The truce addendum's footnotes yielded their secrets under her patient scrutiny. Property listings, shell companies, transfer clauses triggered by specific conditions. "My God," she whispered, pieces clicking into place. The son's requirement wasn't about primitive succession. It was a legal trap. Recognized heirs would force rival families to forfeit properties used as transit points in the trafficking network. The entire pipeline could be dismantled through paperwork instead of bloodshed. Thunder cracked outside, rain lashing against windows designed to withstand sniper fire. The backup generator hummed to life as lightning flickered through the clouds. Naomi looked up from her medical journal at a soft knock. Renzo stood in her doorway, careful not to cross the threshold. "The generator noise, is it disturbing you?" he asked. "No, it's fine." She marked her place with a finger. "I'm used to hospital sounds." He nodded, remaining in the doorway. "If you need anything adjusted, climate controls, lighting, anything, just say the word. Nothing happens here without your consent." I meant that. The promise hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond mere medical autonomy. Outside, the storm raged on, but in this moment of quiet understanding, they were building their own shelter of trust, one careful word at a time. Their worlds were merging gradually, strategy and healing, protection and freedom, power and choice. Each day brought new tests of boundaries and trust. Renzo proved his respect through actions rather than words, installing Brielle's requested security protocols, funding Naomi's clinic upgrades without question, ensuring Zoe had access to both training and autonomy. In return, they brought their skills to bear on his organization's transformation. Brielle's analytical mind found patterns in years of data. Naomi's healing touch earned loyalty from hardened soldiers. Zoe's quick learning and adaptability strengthened security protocols. The compound became a crucible where 4 different types of power, his authority, Brielle's intellect, Naomi's care, and Zoe's force, alloyed into something stronger than its components. Their shared meals were no longer tense affairs, but strategy sessions filled with plans and possibilities. They moved through the fortress like planets in carefully calculated orbits, maintaining safe distances while exerting subtle gravitational pulls on each other's paths. Every interaction was measured, intentional, and infused with growing trust. In the war room, Brielle's evidence boards filled with connections. In the clinic, Naomi's influence spread beyond mere medical care into the realm of emotional healing. In the training areas, Zoe's progress earned genuine respect from the security teams. And Renzo, the man who commanded through fear, learned to lead through earned trust instead. He discovered that power freely given was stronger than power taken, that boundaries created safety rather than weakness, that protection could exist without possession. The convoy sliced through pre-dawn darkness, headlights cutting clean lines across empty streets. Supply runs were routine. Medicine for Naomi's clinic, tech equipment for Brielle's analysis, training gear for Zoe's security drills. Standard procedure until shadows detached from an overpass, becoming solid threats as rival vehicles boxed them in with practiced precision. The first impact rattled teeth. Metal screamed against metal as enemy cars pinned their SUV. Zoe's training kicked in as she assessed angles and threats. Without hesitation, she positioned herself beside Renzo, her stance mirroring his as gunfire erupted. Down! Renzo's command cut through chaos as their driver took a hit, slumping forward. Naomi was already moving, medical bag in hand. She dropped and rolled beneath the SUV's armored frame, pulling the wounded man with her. Her voice remained steady, despite bullets pinging off metal inches away. Pressure wound, upper right quadrant. He's stable if I can stop the bleeding. Brielle's fingers flew across her tablet, hacking into traffic systems. City cameras accessed. Calculating. Got it! Street sweeper 2 blocks north. Rerouting now. Renzo moved like a lethal shadow, each shot precise. He kept his body angled to shield Naomi's position while directing his men with efficient hand signals. 2 fingers left, flank covered. 2 fingers right, advance. His movements were economical, brutal, but his attention never wavered from protecting their medic. Zoe matched his rhythm, muscle memory from training taking over. Duck, pivot, fire, her shots. Found marks with growing accuracy. When a rival tried rushing their position, she dropped him with a clean hit to the knee. No killing shot, just like Renzo taught her. Disable, don't escalate unless necessary. The street sweeper's massive bulk appeared right on schedule, thanks to Brielle's hack. It blocked the only remaining escape route, trapping the attackers between its steel bulk and Renzo's team. The tide turned fast after that. As enemies fell back in disarray, Renzo moved with cold purpose. He dragged a wounded rival from a crashed car, zip-tying his hands while barking orders for secure transport. The man would talk, they all did eventually, but Renzo's methods had changed since the women arrived. Information could be extracted without breaking bodies. Naomi worked steadily, pressure bandages stopping the driver's blood loss. He'll need surgery, but he's stable. We need to move. Backup vehicles arrived within minutes, a synchronized dance of professional efficiency. The wounded were loaded first, then evidence gathered, shell casings collected, nothing left to chance. Back at the compound, tension vibrated through reinforced walls. The attack was too coordinated, too precise. Someone had leaked their route. The list of suspects grew shorter with each passing hour. As sunset painted the sky in burning colors, Renzo gathered them in his office. The space had changed since their first confrontation. Now it held traces of them all. Brielle's analysis boards, Naomi's medical texts, Zoe's tactical maps. Renzo's voice carried weight as he spoke the ancient words. Blood oath before witnesses. Anyone who touches you becomes a ghost with a headstone. He drew a knife across his palm, letting red drops fall onto white paper. My word, my life, my vow. It wasn't theater. The ritual mattered less than the intent behind it. His eyes held theirs in turn. Brielle's analytical gaze, Naomi's compassionate scrutiny, Zoe's warrior assessment. The promise settled between them like a living thing. Later, in Naomi's clinic, she cleaned the cut on his knuckles with gentle efficiency. This needs stitches? Renzo didn't flinch as the needle passed through skin. His focus stayed on her face, reading the subtle tells of exhaustion. You should rest. Soon. She tied off neat sutures. We need to discuss the clause first. Brielle looked up from her laptop, where she'd been documenting the attack. Court filings before media. Control the narrative. Agreed. Zoe cleaned her gun with practiced motions. The tabloids would twist it into scandal instead of strategy. They had come so far from that first rooftop confrontation. Now they moved in sync, 4 separate forces aligned toward a common goal. The clause wasn't just about heirs anymore. It was about dismantling a system that hurt innocent people. Naomi finished bandaging Renzo's hand. Her touch lingered for a moment, professional distance softening into something warmer. He remained still, letting her set the pace of contact. Brielle's fingers tapped keys, building their legal framework. We'll need affidavits from survivors, medical records, financial trails. My clinic files are organized, Naomi said. Everything documented, everything admissible. Zoe nodded toward the window where security teams patrolled with renewed vigilance. We've got their routines mapped now. They'll slip up again. The attack had changed things, crystallizing their alliance into something stronger. Renzo's vow wasn't about possession. It was about partnership. Protection freely given, respect mutually earned. They worked late into the night, building their case piece by piece. Legal documents spread across tables, medical files stacked neat and damning, security footage revealing patterns of movement, 4 different approaches weaving into one unified strategy. The compound hummed with activity, guards doubling patrols, medical staff preparing supplies, analysts processing data. But in this room, focus narrowed to the core team. Renzo and his 3 partners, each bringing unique strengths to their shared mission. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to face, but tonight they had survived together, fought together, planned together. The trust between them grew stronger with each test, each promise kept, each boundary respected. As midnight approached, they separated to their own domains. Brielle to her data, Naomi to her patients, Zoe to her security rounds. Renzo watched them go, the weight of his oath settling like armor across his shoulders. Not chains to bind, but shields to protect. Not control, but choice. Not power over, but power shared. Midnight oil burned in Renzo's war room as Brielle's fingers flew across keyboard keys, multiple screens reflecting in her glasses. Property deeds and shell company records filled one monitor, while the truce clause occupied another. Her analytical mind pieced together the puzzle hidden in plain sight. Look at this. She highlighted a section of the clause. The language about heirs recognized isn't just about succession, it's a legal trigger. Renzo leaned over her shoulder, close but not touching. His eyes narrowed at the documentation. Explain. These shell companies protecting pipeline properties? Brielle pulled up a complex ownership web. They're structured to automatically forfeit if specific family conditions are met. The clause is a weapon disguised as tradition. Naomi set down her coffee, moving closer to study the screens. So, public recognition of heirs would collapse the entire framework. Brielle's satisfaction was evident. Family law trumps corporate shells. Once the right conditions trigger, those properties transfer automatically. Zoe whistled low. Clever bastards who wrote this. Hide a blade in plain sight. 2 tracks, Renzo decided, his tactical mind already mapping possibilities. Public moves to set conditions, private work to prepare the trap. They gathered around the conference table, spreading documents across its surface. Brielle drafted framework points, while Naomi organized medical files, and Zoe sketched entry diagrams. Renzo watched them work, noting how naturally they fell into complementary roles. Public vows first, Brielle outlined. Traditional enough to be believable, modern enough to hold up legally. Meanwhile, we gather sworn testimony from survivors, document everything. Renzo nodded. I'll authorize formation of a survivor trust, joint control between the 4 of us. Equal votes, equal responsibility. The women who testify will need support, Naomi said, medical protocols taking shape in her neat handwriting. I want trauma-informed intake procedures, counseling available, medical care guaranteed. Done. Renzo's agreement was immediate. Whatever resources you need. She sketched out a schedule grid. We'll need to space testimonials carefully, give each woman time to prepare, recover, no rushing anyone before they're ready. Zoe spread tactical maps across her end of the table. 3 primary targets once filings go live. This warehouse near the port, that import business downtown, and the storage facility by the old rail yard. Her fingers traced potential entry points, security blind spots she'd identified during surveillance. Clean teams, minimal force unless engaged. Evidence preservation is priority. Agreed. Renzo studied her diagrams. We coordinate with local authorities only after we're in position. No advance notice, no leaks. Brielle's screens filled with cascading data as her programs ran property searches. Each site we hit will trigger forfeitures down the chain. We'll need to move fast once we start. They'll try to transfer assets. Let them try. Naomi's voice held steel beneath its gentleness. The more they scramble, the more evidence they leave. The night deepened as they refined their plan. Coffee cups emptied and filled again. Papers shuffled, computers hummed, phones buzzed with secure messages to trusted contacts. Renzo moved between them, offering input but never dominating. This was partnership in action, each person's expertise respected, each voice carrying equal weight. Tomorrow's dinner, he said finally, checking his watch. We need to coordinate timing. The bait was carefully planned. A formal meal with key staff, designed to flush out whoever had accessed the vault-stamped ammunition. watching reactions, tracking movements, noting who asked what questions. Medical staff at 1800, Naomi said, checking her clinic schedule. Security rotation change at 1900. Dinner service begins 2000, Brielle added. I've got cameras covering every approach to the dining room. Zoe laid out a seating chart. Strategic placement, clear lines of sight, multiple exit routes. She marked positions with colored dots. We keep the suspects where we can watch them. They synchronized their watches, double-checking comms, channels and backup signals. The plan was solid, but plans could always go wrong. They needed to be ready for anything. Remember, Renzo said quietly, whoever leaked those rounds thinks they're still hidden. Let them keep thinking that. Naomi organized her medical supplies, ready for any potential outcome. The clinic will be prepped, just in case. My analysis programs will run real time, Brielle said. Any unusual patterns we'll know immediately. And I'll have teams on standby, Zoe finished. Quick response if needed. The war room fell quiet except for the soft hum of electronics and the rustle of papers. 4 people, united by purpose, each bringing their own strength to the mission. The trust between them had been earned through action, not words, through kept promises and respected boundaries. Brielle's screens continued mapping property connections, building their legal arsenal. Naomi's medical protocols would protect vulnerable witnesses. Zoe's tactical plans would secure evidence they needed, and Renzo's resources would make it all possible. They worked through the night's final hours, refining details and backup plans. The Survivor Trust took shape in legal documents, its structure ensuring no single person could corrupt its purpose. Tomorrow's dinner would identify their traitor, but the larger mission stretched far beyond that. This wasn't just about catching one leak or securing one compound. This was about dismantling an entire system of exploitation, using its own legal machinery against it. The truce clause had been written as a cage, but they would transform it into a key. Their watches aligned with soft electronic beeps. Synchronized time, synchronized purpose. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight they had built something stronger than any individual plan. They had forged a true alliance, each person's skills amplifying the others. The war room's screens cast blue light across focused faces as they made final preparations. Property deeds and shell companies, medical protocols and tactical maps, all pieces of a larger strategy taking shape in the pre-dawn hours. Crystal stemware caught the chandelier light as servers moved through Renzo's formal dining room with practiced grace. The engagement dinner's facade sparkled like the champagne, all surface beauty hiding deeper currents. Naomi wore a midnight blue dress that made her look both elegant and approachable, perfect for a future Donna. She chatted with socialites about her clinic work, carefully editing details. Brielle, in charcoal gray silk, discussed investment strategies with 2 lieutenants, her tablet never far from reach. Zoe, striking in deep green, maintained casual conversation while her eyes constantly swept the room. Renzo played his role perfectly. The powerful Don preparing to settle down, his attention divided equally among his 3 fiancés without revealing which would bear his heir. The story they'd seeded through, careful whispers, a modern arrangement combining old traditions with new power dynamics. To new beginnings, one of the older capos raised his glass, crystal catching the light. And to the continuation of strong bloodlines. The toast rippled around the long table. Zoe lifted her glass, using the motion to scan beneath the stark white tablecloth. Her trained eye caught an anomaly. A tiny black disc adhered to the table's underside, a transmitter. Without breaking her pleasant expression, she let her napkin drop. As she bent to retrieve it, her fingers found the device. In one smooth motion, she palmed it and straightened up. More champagne? A server approached with a silver bucket of ice. Please. Zoe shifted her hand over the bucket, letting the transmitter drop into the melting ice. The cold water would muffle any signal until they could properly dispose of it. Across the room, Brielle's tablet discreetly scanned for unauthorized frequencies. Her eyebrows lifted slightly as she registered 2 hidden cameras, neither part of Renzo's extensive security system. With a few taps that looked like casual email checking, she initiated a localized disruption that would render the devices useless without alerting their operator. If you'll excuse me, Naomi smiled at her dinner companions. Doctor's habits. I need to check on a patient. She moved gracefully into the hallway, her heels clicking against marble. The clinic wing was darker than usual, the motion sensors slow to respond. Something felt wrong before she even reached the doors. Inside, her organized space had been violated. Drawers hung open, cabinets gaped. But this was no ordinary ransacking. Most items remained untouched. Only one filing cabinet showed signs of targeted interference: her fertility records. The copies she kept of her own medical history, reproductive status, hormone levels, all gone. She forced her breathing to remain steady as she documented the scene with her phone. This wasn't random vandalism or drug-seeking behavior. This was someone looking for very specific information about her ability to provide an heir. Back in the dining room, Renzo was concluding his own toast when his phone vibrated. A message from his head of security. The armory audit was complete. The vault-stamped rounds used in the assassination attempt had been traced to a specific safe. His face remained perfectly composed as he read the details. Only 2 people had access to that secure storage: himself and his godfather, the man who had raised him, trained him, positioned him to take control of the family, the same man who had always stressed the importance of legitimate heirs to secure power, who had insisted on including specific language about sons in the original truce agreement. "Everything all right, Don?" one of the lieutenants asked, noting his prolonged silence. "Perfect." Renzo's voice emerged controlled, stripped of all emotion, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "Just perfect?" The dinner continued with exquisite food and carefully curated wine pairings. Conversations flowed naturally between business associates and social climbers, but beneath the polished surface, new intelligence gathered like storm clouds. A transmitter meant someone was listening. Hidden cameras meant someone was watching. Stolen medical records meant someone was specifically targeting their reproductive capabilities. And vault-stamped ammunition meant someone very close to power wanted to control the situation with lethal force. Brielle monitored her security feeds while appearing to simply enjoy her dessert. 3 sets of compromised eyes on their operation, now identified. She'd have full data analysis by morning. Zoe maintained her pleasant socializing while marking every exit, every weapon, every potential threat in the room. The transmitter in ice was just the beginning. She counted 4 people whose body language changed subtly when inheritance was mentioned. Naomi returned to her seat, her smile perfectly maintained despite what she'd discovered. She reached for her water glass with steady hands, years of emergency room work helping her project calm she didn't feel. Renzo's carefully orchestrated dinner proceeded exactly as planned, drawing out reactions, exposing surveillance, confirming suspicions. Every toast, every casual mention of future plans, every discussion of family traditions served to make their observers reveal themselves. The crystal sparkled, the silver gleamed, and beneath it all, the noose tightened around their hidden enemies. Each piece of evidence gathered this evening brought them closer to understanding the full scope of what they faced. But the revelation about the armory safe cut deepest. Renzo had expected opposition, had prepared for betrayal from many quarters. But his godfather's potential involvement shifted the ground beneath their careful plans. The man who controlled the original truce documents, who had insisted on specific language about heirs, who had access to the vault-stamped ammunition that had nearly killed Naomi, who had shaped Renzo's entire rise to power. Servers cleared the final courses as guests began making their farewells. The engagement dinner had served its purpose, both as a public statement of intention and as carefully baited trap. Now they had to deal with everything they'd caught in their net. The last guest's car disappeared through the gates as Naomi made her way to Renzo's office. She found him behind his desk, tie loosened, reviewing security feeds from the dinner. His shoulders carried the weight of the godfather's betrayal. "We need to talk about your medical file," she said, closing the door. He looked up, face carefully neutral. "The results were clean." "The results show a man who treats his body like a shield." She moved closer, medical authority in her voice. 3 bullet wounds, multiple fracture sites, extensive burn scarring consistent with an explosion. You calculate risk by assuming you're expendable. Better me than anyone else. That's not your choice anymore, not with what we're building. She spread his medical charts across his desk. These injuries tell a story, one you haven't shared. Renzo stood, moving to the window. For a long moment, he was silent, looking out at the compound's lights. When he spoke, his voice was rough with memory. "I was 19, young, arrogant, certain I could protect everyone." His fingers traced an invisible pattern on the glass. The marriage was arranged, consolidating territory between families. Elena was 17, brilliant, fierce. She deserved better than being a chess piece. Naomi waited, letting him find the words. 3 months after the wedding, we were heading to a charity event. I was driving. His jaw tightened. The bomb was military grade, planted under my seat. She died instantly. I spent 6 weeks in intensive care. That's why you resist involving anyone else in direct action, Naomi said softly. Why you take point on every operation. He turned to face her. I swore no woman would ever be collateral damage in my wars again. And now here you are, all three of you, walking into the center of one. By choice, with eyes open, she stepped closer. We're not chess pieces either. The space between them felt charged, different than before. His eyes held hers, dark with remembered pain and present hunger. May I kiss you? He asked, voice low and careful. Yes. Clear consent, freely given. He cupped her face with calloused hands, touching her like she was precious and breakable. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper as she pressed closer. Her fingers found the scar tissue at his ribs, mapping his survival. His thumb traced her jaw, treasuring. They broke apart, breathing hard, before passion could override their agreed boundaries. Safety first, then intimacy. They'd both seen too much trauma to risk otherwise. When this is done, she promised, when we've eliminated the threat. When we're truly safe, he agreed, resting his forehead against hers. In the security hub, Brielle's fingers flew across keyboards as she traced money trails from the dinner. Most vendors showed expected payment patterns, but one caught her eye, an events service company that received funds from a familiar shell corporation. Got you? She muttered, following the transfer back to its source. The shell belonged to the Godfather's network, masked through layers of legitimate businesses. Why would he secretly fund part of their engagement dinner? Her phone buzzed with a message from Zoe, who was reviewing security footage. Check server timestamps, 21.1721:34. Brielle pulled up the dining room feed. A server moved between tables, stance slightly off, favoring her right leg. Something about the gait pattern. Her breath caught. She'd seen that walk before, in home videos of Zoe's missing cousin Maria, taken from a shopping mall last year. Presumed trafficked through the pipeline they were fighting to destroy. Cross-referencing face recognition was impossible with the server's careful positioning, always turned away from cameras. But that distinctive gait, combined with the Godfather's shell company payment. Zoe burst into the security hub. Tell me you see it too. The walk pattern matches. Brielle pulled up a split screen. And look, she left in a delivery van 10 minutes ago. They rushed to find Renzo and Naomi, catching them just as they left his office. Quick explanations, rapid decisions. 2 cars would be less conspicuous than a full convoy. We follow at a distance, Renzo ordered as they headed for the garage. No engagement until we confirm ID and assess the situation. Zoe checked her weapon, sliding into the passenger seat of Renzo's Mercedes. Brielle and Naomi took the second car, a subtle sedan that wouldn't draw attention. The delivery van wound through Chicago's emptying streets, unaware of its shadow pursuit, past closed shops and dimmed office buildings, into areas where streetlights flickered and security cameras were conspicuously absent. Zoe's hands clenched on her knees. If it's really Maria, we'll get her out, Renzo promised, voice hard with certainty. But we do it smart. No risks that compromise the larger mission. In the trailing car, Brielle tracked their position on her tablet while Naomi checked her medical kit. Both women were silent, processing the implications. If Maria had been infiltrated into their dinner service, it meant someone was using her as both spy and hostage. The van's taillights gleamed red in the darkness as it turned down another street. 2 cars followed at careful intervals, headlights dim, maintaining separation to avoid detection. The quiet night held its breath, waiting to see what they would find. Inside each vehicle, 4 people who had begun as strategic allies felt the bonds of something deeper, forged through shared danger, strengthened by growing trust, now tested by this unexpected development. They moved through the sleeping city like hunters, each bringing their specific skills to this midnight pursuit. The streets grew narrower, buildings pressed closer. Somewhere ahead, a missing woman, who might be Maria, carried information about their dinner back to someone who wanted to control their future. Behind her, 4 people, who had chosen to stand together, followed into the unknown. The van slowed near an abandoned warehouse, its brake lights reflecting off grimy windows. Renzo's Mercedes hung back while Brielle positioned their sedan to block the rear exit. The industrial district stretched empty and dark around them, perfect for an extraction or an ambush. Zoe checked her weapon one final time. Quick and clean, she muttered. On your lead, Renzo confirmed, scanning the perimeter. They moved like shadows, Zoe taking point while Renzo covered their approach. The van's engine ticked as it cooled. Inside the warehouse, a single light burned. Through dirty windows, they could make out 2 figures, one standing, one seated. Zoe breached first, her training evident in every controlled movement. The door gave way under her precise kick. Inside, Maria sat zip-tied to a metal chair, shock cuffs blinking on her ankles. A guard reached for his weapon, but Renzo's aim was faster, forcing him to freeze. "Hands where I see them," Renzo ordered, voice glacial. Naomi rushed to Maria, medical bag ready. "I'm going to check you over, okay?" Her gentle tone contrasted with the tension crackling through the warehouse. Maria nodded, tears tracking down her cheeks. While Renzo secured the guard, Zoe cut through the zip ties with practiced efficiency. The shock cuffs required more delicate work. One wrong move could trigger them. "Easy," she murmured to her cousin. "Almost there." Brielle swept through the space, gathering laptops and hard drives. Her trained eye caught details others might miss. Fresh coffee cups suggesting recent occupancy, tire tracks and dust showing regular deliveries. This wasn't just a drop point, it was an active hub. "BP's low but stable," Naomi reported, checking Maria's vitals. "Minor contusions, dehydration, no serious trauma that I can see." She administered fluids while continuing her assessment. Maria's voice came out rough from disuse. "Godfather," she whispered. Her trembling hands produced a folded paper from her sleeve, an ornate program for a cathedral ceremony. Brielle took it, eyes narrowing at the handwritten notation in the margin. Succession staging. The ceremony was scheduled for 48 hours from now. "He's planning to use the truce recognition," Brielle said, pieces clicking into place. "Once heirs are officially acknowledged, he'll position himself as regent. Continuing his control through the next generation." Renzo's jaw tightened. "Oh, using our children as his puppets." They transported Maria back to the compound as pre-dawn light began creeping over the city. In the clinic, she confirmed what they had suspected. She'd been forced to plant the transmitter during dinner service, threatened with shock punishment if she refused. "He has others," she added, voice stronger after treatment. "More girls, more families. He says no one leaves the pipeline without his permission." Renzo paced the clinic floor, violence contained beneath his controlled exterior. In the past, this betrayal would have triggered immediate retribution. Streets running red, examples made. But he looked at Naomi tending to Maria, at Brielle analyzing intel patterns, at Zoe standing guard with precise discipline, and chose differently. "Issue a quiet alert," he ordered his captains. "No visible moves, no executions. We gather intelligence first." His gaze met each of the women's in turn. "Your safety depends on being smarter than they expect, not louder." The team gathered in the war room as morning fully arrived. Maps covered the walls, surveillance feeds scrolled on monitors, and coffee grew cold in forgotten cups as they planned. "The cathedral ceremony is our trap," Renzo declared. "Not his." He outlined the strategy forming in his mind. 3 synchronized strikes while his guard is down. Brielle nodded, already drafting documents. Legal filings timed to the ceremony itself. The moment he tries to claim regency, we trigger the property forfeitures. "Digital assets transfer to the survivor trust simultaneously," Zoe added, marking entry points on the blueprint. "While his accounts are frozen, we hit the pipeline properties." "I'll have medical teams staged nearby," Naomi said, ready to assist any women we find. They worked through the details with meticulous care. Timing would be crucial. Legal, financial, and physical strikes had to land together for maximum impact. Each person brought their expertise: Brielle's strategic precision, Naomi's protective protocols, Zoe's tactical knowledge, and Renzo's command of both legitimate and shadow resources. The war room hummed with focused energy as they built their counterstrike. Surveillance teams tracked Godfather's movements. Legal documents were prepared in triple redundancy. Tactical teams memorized entry plans. Medical supplies were cached at secure locations. Maria rested in the clinic, monitored by trusted staff, her presence a reminder of what they fought against. Her rescue had exposed the Godfather's play, but it also proved their growing strength as a unit. Where he saw chess pieces to sacrifice, they saw lives to protect. Hours ticked by as they refined the plan. The cathedral's soaring architecture would witness a very different ceremony than the Godfather intended. Instead of securing his power through the next generation, he would face the consequences of decades of corruption. Renzo studied the cathedral blueprints, marking sightlines and access points. The women moved around him with practiced familiarity now, their earlier wariness replaced by coordinated purpose. They had begun as reluctant allies bound by necessity. Now they operated as a team, each bringing their strength to a shared mission. The compound stirred to life around them. staff and security moving through morning routines. But in the war room, focus remained absolute. Maps were memorized, contingencies planned, resources positioned. Every detail had to be perfect. Dawn painted the sky outside in pale gold, but none of them noticed. Their world had narrowed to this: a cathedral ceremony in 48 hours, 3 synchronized strikes, and 1 chance to end the Godfather's reign while protecting those in his power. The trap was set. Now they would spring it. Dawn broke over the compound as Brielle spread documents across the war room table. Property deeds, sworn statements, and transfer papers formed a paper trail that would dismantle decades of corruption. She checked each witness statement twice, ensuring every signature would hold up in court. These need to reach 3 different judges simultaneously, she told Renzo, who stood studying security footage, the moment the cathedral ceremony begins. Already arranged, he confirmed, trusted couriers, all with backup routes. Naomi entered with fresh coffee and medical logs. Maria's healing well. She's given us names of 5 more witnesses willing to testify. Through the morning, they refined their strategy. Brielle matched safe houses to witness lists while Renzo's teams did advanced sweeps of each location. Naomi organized medical supplies into go bags, each packed with trauma kits and carefully documented chain of custody forms. By afternoon, the compound buzzed with controlled activity. In the subterranean range, Zoe led her hand-picked unit through property layouts. They used foam rounds, marking potential civilian zones in blue tape. Here and here, she pointed to blueprint sections. These are likely holding areas. We breach soft, clear, room by room. No unnecessary force. Her team nodded, running the sequence again. They'd need perfect timing when the real operation launched. In the clinic, Naomi prepared testimony protocols with her medical staff. Some witnesses will be traumatized, she explained. We document injuries, but prioritize their comfort. No one testifies unless they choose to. Maria helped from her recovery bed, identifying faces and surveillance photos. Each confirmed identity strengthened their case. Renzo spent the afternoon recording video declarations, his words carefully chosen. I recognize these women as equal partners in the organization, he stated for the record. Any future heirs will be born of their free choice, not coercion. Brielle reviewed each recording, ensuring the language would trigger legal mechanisms without compromising anyone's autonomy. They needed precision, not just force. Evening brought them together for final checks. Zoe's tactical teams reported ready. Naomi's medical network stood by. Brielle's legal documents waited in sealed envelopes. Renzo's security grid showed clear. Communication channels? Brielle asked. One-time encryption pads distributed, Renzo confirmed. Each team has 3 backup frequencies. They worked through dinner, going over contingencies. Naomi organized witness transport schedules. Zoe finalized breach points. Brielle triple-checked filing times. The second day dawned with increased urgency. Maria provided crucial details about the cathedral's security setup. Delivery schedules, guard rotations, blind spots in the coverage. The ceremony starts at noon tomorrow, Renzo reminded them. Every piece has to move simultaneously. They spent the morning running communication drills. Each team practiced falling back to alternate channels. Backup plans had backup plans. Afternoon brought final equipment checks. Zoe's unit tested every piece of gear twice. Naomi's medical teams staged supplies at 5 different locations. Brielle's couriers memorized their routes. The legal triggers are the key, she explained. Once those property forfeitures hit, his whole structure collapses. Evening saw them refining details. Witness protection protocols, evidence chains, extraction routes, nothing left to chance. When this ends, Naomi said quietly, we'll need infrastructure for the survivors. Real support, not just rescue. Renzo nodded. Whatever resources you need. Night fell over the compound. Security patrols moved in practice patterns while inside. Final preparations continued. Maps were burned into memory, codes committed to heart. At midnight, they gathered in the compound's small chapel. Candlelight cast soft shadows on stone walls as they faced each other in the quiet space. Before tomorrow changes everything, Renzo said. We should speak our truth. Brielle stepped forward first. I want shared power, she stated clearly. Real authority, not just influence. Equal voice in decisions that affect lives. Naomi followed. I want to build a clinic network, something permanent, places where women can heal and rebuild, funded properly. I want a formal vote on life and death calls, Zoe declared. No more unilateral choices, we decide together. Renzo listened, candlelight reflecting in his dark eyes. Then he spoke with quiet intensity. "I pledge my empire to your mission," he said. "Not just resources or protection. Everything I control will serve this purpose." He met each of their gazes. "We'll build something better from the ashes of tomorrow." They stood together in the chapel's hushed atmosphere, 4 people whose paths had crossed by necessity, now united by choice. Outside, the compound hummed with preparation for tomorrow's reckoning. Inside this quiet space, they anchored themselves in shared purpose. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on walls that had witnessed countless prayers. But tonight they heard something different. Not pleas for mercy or promises of vengeance, but vows to build justice from the ground up. Tomorrow would bring their carefully planned storm. Tonight, in this moment of calm, they stood together and spoke their dreams for after. Not just destruction of the old, but construction of something new. Something that could heal instead of harm. The midnight hour ticked past as they remained in the chapel, drawing strength from each other's presence. Tomorrow would test every plan, every promise, every preparation. But here, now, they were ready. United not by blood or fear, but by choice and purpose. Morning light streamed through stained glass, casting jeweled patterns across the cathedral's marble floor. Incense hung thick in the air as Renzo entered with the 3 women, cameras clicking from strategic points in the pews. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space, measured and deliberate. Brielle wore a tailored suit that concealed a tactical vest, her tablet tucked away but ready. Naomi carried a small medical kit, disguised as an evening clutch, while Zoe's formal dress allowed full range of movement. Renzo moved with calculated grace in his ceremonial blacks. The godfather waited at the altar, resplendent in traditional regalia. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he watched Renzo approach. Behind him, choir members shifted subtly, select members of Zoe's unit in disguise, their weapons hidden beneath robes. "My son," the godfather proclaimed, voice carrying to the vaulted ceiling, "today we cement the future of our family." Renzo knelt as tradition demanded, head bowed. The godfather raised his hands for the blessing, golden rings catching the light. In that moment, Brielle's team began transmitting files to the federal courthouse. Property documents, trust formations, and recognition declarations streamed through secure channels. The blessing words fell from the godfather's lips in ancient Italian. Renzo remained still, waiting. In the gallery, Maria sat among other witnesses, her server uniform replaced with a federal agent's badge concealed beneath her jacket. As the final word echoed, Renzo moved like lightning, his blade pressed against the godfather's throat before anyone could react. Cathedral doors thunked shut, locks engaging. Above, the choir loft draperies dropped, revealing Zoe's tactical team with clear lines of sight. "How dare you!" the godfather hissed. "No," Renzo said quietly. "How dare you run a pipeline through my territory? How dare you twist tradition into torture?" Naomi's digital dossier hit the judge's secure portal right on schedule. Hundreds of survivor testimonies, medical records, and asset trails painting an undeniable picture of systematic abuse. Outside, engines roared as rival families tried to breach the cathedral. Shots cracked against stone. Renzo's men responded with disciplined force, every action captured on body cameras. No excessive violence, no collateral damage, just controlled defense of a legal operation. "Stand down once they're contained," Renzo ordered through his comm. "This ends by law, not bloodshed." The godfather struggled against Renzo's grip. "You would destroy everything we built?" "We're building something better," Brielle answered, checking her tablet. "Property forfeitures are processing now. The pipeline's shell companies are collapsing." Naomi stepped forward, her voice carrying. 47 survivors testified, 12 properties identified, 300 pages of evidence. It's over. Uniformed figures emerged from the crowd, federal agents who had posed as cathedral staff. They approached with court orders in hand, badges gleaming. "This is a legal seizure," the lead agent announced. "All assets named in these documents are now under federal control, pending transfer to the Survivor Trust." Zoe's team maintained overwatch as the godfather was secured. No unnecessary force, no vengeance, just the quiet efficiency of justice being served. "You'll regret this betrayal," the godfather spat. "No betrayal," Renzo replied. "Just evolution. The family will serve life now, not death." Through the stained glass, they could see vehicle lights converging on pipeline properties across the city, each location met by agents with court orders, each transfer happening simultaneously to prevent asset flight. Brielle's tablet pinged with updates. Trust documentation confirmed, legal recognition processed, property transfers initiating. The Godfather's face twisted as he realized the depth of their preparation. Not just physical force, but legal, financial, and social pressure applied with surgical precision. The old way dies today, Renzo stated, but the family survives, reformed. Federal agents led the Godfather away as Naomi coordinated with medical teams standing by to support witnesses. Zoe's unit maintained security, professional and restrained. Outside, the city held its breath. Decades of underworld power were shifting, not through bloodshed, but through paperwork. Properties being seized, assets frozen, all funneling into a trust dedicated to healing instead of harm. The cathedral's ancient bells began to toll, marking the hour. Sunlight caught the stained glass, sending rivers of color across the scene. Renzo stood with the three women, watching convoy lights arc away through gathering darkness. "Status?" he asked quietly. "Properties transferring on schedule," Brielle reported. "No technical issues." "Medical teams in position at all recovery sites," Naomi added. "Support networks activating." "Perimeter secure," Zoe confirmed. "All units showing discipline." The city skyline glowed against the night sky as reports continued flowing in, pipeline properties being secured, survivors moving to safe locations, legal mechanisms clicking into place with unstoppable momentum. They stood together in the cathedral's vast space, surrounded by centuries of tradition now being reshaped. Not destroyed, but transformed. Power redirected from harm to healing. Through the windows, they could see their convoy waiting, federal vehicles escorting the Godfather to custody. Renzo's men standing down as ordered, proving that discipline served justice better than violence. The Empire was leashing itself voluntarily, choosing to serve a greater purpose, not through force or coercion, but through conscious choice, through recognition that power could protect as well as destroy. Across the city, lights blazed in offices as legal teams processed the cascade of property transfers. Clinics prepared to receive survivors. Safe houses activated their protocols. A network of healing rising from the ashes of exploitation. The cathedral stood silent now, witness to a revolution accomplished through paperwork instead of bullets, through careful planning instead of blind revenge, through the power of law wielded as precisely as any weapon. Night settled fully over the city as convoy headlights traced patterns through the streets, change rippling outward in ever-widening circles. And now we're Empire transforming itself from within, choosing to become something new. The compound's great room glowed with warm light as they gathered around Renzo's mahogany dining table. Multiple screens displayed the cascading court orders, each one a brick in the wall of protection they'd built. "The truce is now recognized as a protective covenant," Brielle read, her fingers tracing lines on her tablet. "Full immunity granted to the Brooks, Carter, and Sinclair lines." Naomi leaned forward, scanning the medical provisions. "All pipeline properties are transferred to the trust, survivor support funding secured. And oversight split 4 ways," Zoe added, watching the asset transfers populate in real time. "Equal control, equal voice." Renzo stood at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence softened by exhaustion and something deeper. Relief, perhaps even hope. With deliberate care, he laid out 3 identical rings on the polished wood, each set with a deep blue sapphire. Beside them, he placed 3 sets of master keys to the compound's secure wings. "I'm done giving orders," he said quietly. "From here forward, I only make vows." The women exchanged glances, years of shared history and recent battles flowing between them in that silent communication. "The choice about children, sons or daughters, belongs to us," Brielle stated firmly. "When we're ready, if we're ready." "Because real safety starts with choice," Naomi added, her medical training evident in her precise tone. "And real protection means respecting those choices," Zoe finished, her fighter's instincts reading Renzo's body language for any hint of resistance. But there was none. Instead, he nodded, his expression open. "The Empire serves the mission now. Your mission. Our mission." One by one, they stepped forward. Not as supplicants or conquests, but as equals claiming their place in this new power structure. "I accept this ring as a symbol of shared governance," Brielle said, sliding the sapphire onto her finger. "My strategic mind belongs to rebuilding." "I accept this ring as a healer's covenant," Naomi declared, the stone glinting as she put it on. "My skills will serve recovery." "I accept this ring as a warrior's pledge," Zoe stated, the metal catching light as she wore it. My strength protects what we're building. Renzo watched them with intensity, memorizing this moment. The family structure becomes the foundation for something larger: protection, healing, rebirth. They moved through the compound's shadowed halls to their private wing, exhaustion finally claiming its due. The night had been long, the victory hard won. Sleep came in peaceful waves, unmarred by threats for the first time in memory. Dawn broke over Lake Michigan, painting the compound's stone walls in soft gold. The chapel bell rang once, twice, marking the hour as they gathered in the private sanctuary. The trust charter lay ready on the altar, thick cream paper filled with carefully crafted provisions, each clause designed to ensure the Empire's resources would serve healing instead of harm. Brielle signed first, her signature bold and clear. For strategic direction and oversight. Naomi's hand was steady as she added her name. For medical care and survivor support. Zoe's signature came next, decisive strokes. For security and protection protocols. Renzo signed last, his pen completing the document that would reshape generations. For resources and implementation. They moved to the garden afterward, walking the gravel paths as morning sun sparkled on the lake. The compound felt different now, not a fortress, but a foundation. The first clinic endowments processed today, Naomi said, reviewing her tablet. 3 locations to start, expanding to 12 within 6 months. Security teams are already transitioning to the new protection protocols, Zoe reported. Training for trauma-informed response begins next week. Asset conversion is proceeding on schedule, Brielle added. The legal framework is holding strong. They reached the breakfast terrace where staff, now employees of a legitimate enterprise, had laid out coffee and fresh pastries. The morning light caught the sapphires on their fingers as they took their seats. Renzo moved between them with quiet grace, kissing each woman's knuckles in turn. His voice carried clearly in the morning air as he spoke the words that would define their future. Mine to protect, yours to decide, ours to build. The lake breeze carried the scent of possibility as they began their first meal as a true council. No longer predator and prey, but partners in purpose. No longer a criminal empire, but a force for reconstruction. The compound buzzed with activity around them, security teams implementing new protocols, clinic staff preparing for expanded operations, legal teams processing endless paperwork. But here in this moment, there was peace. Brielle spread documents across the table, already planning next steps. Naomi reviewed medical supply orders on her tablet while Zoe studied updated security rotations. Renzo watched them work, his expression holding something like wonder at how perfectly their skills complemented each other. Staff moved efficiently around them, adapting to the new reality with professional grace. The old fear was gone, replaced by purpose. The compound was transforming from a fortress into a foundation, its gates now protecting hope instead of hiding corruption. Morning sun turned the lake to diamonds as they shared coffee and plans, 4 equal partners building something unprecedented. The sapphires on their fingers caught the light, not chains, but anchors securing them to the shared mission of protection and renewal.